Hello and welcome to TCA Crossroads, the podcast where entrepreneurs and investors connect. My name is Kostin Tukulescu. I am an entrepreneur and angel investor with Tech Coast Angels. And as usual, my co-host, Mr. David Friedman, joins me. David, hello and welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Never had it so good. Yeah, it's always great to be here and see your smiling face to start it off. And with that, the energy of that music, it's phenomenal.
Woo! Yeah, gets it pumping. Yep. Well, I'm feeling good. We ran into each other at that event last week. What was it? The Startup Grind? No, correct me.
It was the Startup Growth Engine. Yeah, basically.
Yeah. I think we're a little off about that. It's Startup Game Changer Summit. See, I had to Google it and get it right. And I got to give a huge shout out to Scott Fox with OC Startup Council. He does such a phenomenal job with his events. And I personally have been to some of his mastermind.
Over at Thai SoCal was great. I mean, they're the co-sponsors of it, and they did a phenomenal job, as they usually do. That's right.
And Thai's a great addition to the startup community here. And and Scott, keep it going, man. We love you. All right, and David, we have kind of a legend today. In my opinion, this man is a bit of a legend because he ran a company that made a lot of children and teenagers' lives very happy. Who do we have on the podcast today, David?
Yeah, today we're very fortunate. We have Jeff Lapin. Jeff was is chairman emeritus of Tech Coast Angels, my predecessor actually at TCA, and I guess I can look at him as a mentor and somebody that I aspire to as I grow older. I'll put that out there right now. And he ran some iconic companies as a C-level executive. So without further ado, let's bring on Jeff and have him introduce himself.
There he is, the man, the myth, the legend. Hey, Jeff.
Oh, guys. Hi, guys. How are you? It's great to be here. Jeff? I'm doing fine. It's fun to be here, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, tell us a little about yourself and the companies that you had built into fairly substantially well-known, iconic companies that we all know and love.
So very, very short, I was a young lawyer, and one of the clients said, I'm going to hire you and double my salary to save money, right? And I was making $70,000 a year. I thought I was rich back in the 80s. And that company was a hotel company, turned out to be Starwood Hotels. I was the president for many years. And it grew from nothing to very big. And then I did some turnarounds for Kleiner Perkins and Sequoia. And then I got into the video game business with three, there you go, Kostin.
That's what I'm talking about.
And I was the president and or CEO of three public video game companies, Take-Two, the most famous, which is Atari, and THQ. But Take-Two is actually the most famous because when I was there, we came out with the first Grand Theft Auto, which everybody will remember. So hotels and video games and a few other subjects. So I've been around a while.
Yeah, I still have my Starwood's card, by the way.
It's no good anymore because it's no good because it's now Marriott, but whatever. Marriott bought Starwood.
Whatever. Bonvoy. Whatever. Things change. But anyway, I want to. You have such a great background, being both an angel investor and being on the CEO side, that your perspective is quite interesting and will be interesting to the participants. Let me start it off with a very softball question. When you look at a startup, the CEO is really critical. And what are the critical qualities of that CEO before we invest and after we invest? And is there a change?
Well, when people ask me this question, I've made about 40 investments in startups, and I've been a CEO. So the two categories that I always say are balance and passion, and I'll explain them with examples if you'd like.
Yeah, sure. Be my guest.
All right. So let me just start down a list in my head that I usually go through, and can the CEO assimilate information? Is he able to listen to other people? Again, balance, right? Can he listen, right? You've got to listen to your team. You've got to listen to the market. Does the CEO have the ability and desire to learn? right? If a CEO says to me, gosh, I know the market, I haven't talked to any of my customers whatsoever, potential customers, that's an immediate red flag, right? So you always have the ability to learn, and you got to be flexible, right? You have the ability to pivot. Of my 40 companies, not one of them hasn't pivoted. So I look for the balance of flexibility.
But let's go back to balance. How do you really judge a priori before we invest? Is there some kind of a test you can give them? Are there questions you ask them? Or is there some actions that you see in the way they interact with the angels or with their own team?
Again, I look for several things. Some obvious ones are, what is their forecast look like? Their 5-year projection, right? We all know that it will never come true. It never comes true, right? But is it balanced? Is it too aggressive or is it too meek, right? That gives me insight into the management team and particularly the CEO, right? I asked the CEO several questions about, again, have you talked to your customers? What do you think your role what is your team's role in your decision-making process, right? I want to make sure that the person is not too much ego and not too meek. And I ask all kind of probing questions to figure that out, because too much ego leads to bad results and too meek leads to bad results. It's a balance between the two. I want him or her to walk the line between humble and being aggressive, that middle line. And with a little of experience, you can ask questions to figure that out.
Well, let's.
Constance,
you're
muted.
Mike, yeah, technical difficulties.
Oh my God! As if I haven't been in video conferencing for 20 years. So if someone's a force of nature, someone's coming in really strong, an expert, a just complete thought leader in the space, but they just come off too strong, too big, not willing to bend, not willing to compromise. That's a deal breaker for you?
That's a deal breaker for me. But then somebody said to me, well, you would have never invested it with Mark Zuckerberg, right? And I probably wouldn't have, frankly. But
or Elon Musk, right?
Right, that's my loss. So there's exceptions, but in general, you got to walk that line between too aggressive and too meek. Because if your ego is too big, usually that sets up I'm not going to listen. I know better than everybody else, and blah blah blah. And maybe with those two guys that I mentioned, it's true. Yeah. But most of us are mere mortals, and it's not true.
But Jeff, let's say that there's somebody that is really passionate. So how do you make sure you don't wind up with misplaced passion? I'm really passionate, and therefore I'm convinced because of what I've done that this makes sense. You as an angel or an investor is saying, hey, you're not listening to me. Where does that balance occur? And how do you determine that?
Well, again, passion is one trait, but passion can hide some bad traits. Okay. For example, dishonesty or inability to listen. Right? It can hide things. So it's one trait. So you've got to look behind it and say, is this person genuinely passionate or is it hiding something? And you just probe. I mean, you just probe and say, because, I always tell, you got to be totally honest, because as soon as you have the perception that you're not honest, you lose everybody. Right? Next, right? There's too much competition in this, right?
Yeah.
And so you probe and see what's behind the passion, right? I'll give you an example. I literally had a CEO drive up in a Ferrari or a Maserati or whatever it is, right, to a Starbucks meeting, okay? And I said, you're just out of college. How are you affording something that most people can't afford? Well, my parents are this and that, and, I got the family business, and I'm going to try this first and eventually go. And he was very passionate, but I'm looking behind this thing going, he's got a huge trampoline to fall on. Is that the kind of person I want to invest in? Who can leave and go run the family business with his Ferrari? I don't think so, even though he was really passionate, right?
Yeah. I would ask which Ferrari he had. I mean, that would make
I have no idea. I couldn't tell a Ferrari this from a Ferrari that. So whatever.
Yeah.
Right? I don't even know if it was a Ferrari, but it was one of those. So that's a real story. And I didn't invest for that reason.
Yeah. And
Well,
also that kind of speaks a little bit to the hunger. You kind of need a little bit of hunger. You need a little bit of there needs to be room. Like if you're already coming from a place where you have a Ferrari and a family business,
I want the CEO to die trying. Okay. And if he fails because of good reasons, great. That's, that happens. But if he fails because he's not trying hard enough or didn't understand the market or was too ego driven, blah, 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 that's a problem. So I look to avoid that. And believe me, my first 10 or 15 investments, I made every mistake in the book. I learned the hard way. Cost me a lot of money.
Give us something to look out for just in those first 10, 15 you said. What was something to just a lesson learned that
no names.
People can take?
Names.
I'm not mentioning any names.
Right.
One, I followed the crowd, right? 30 people in TCA invested, okay?
Yeah.
And all these smart people, I'm new at this. Okay, I'll put in my money and blah, 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 blah. Never follow the crowd, right? We all lost money. Do your own due diligence, meet with the CEO, blah, blah, blah. And I always suggest to every entrepreneur meet with the CEO one-on-one, especially if you're going to make any kind of substantial investment. Really important. Yeah. Another one where we lost all of our money, it was a husband and wife team. A lot of people from TCA went in. We did not do enough due diligence. They were having marital problems. They eventually got divorced. The company fell apart. Okay.
Yeah.
Ask a bunch of questions. Okay. I didn't ask those personal questions. I should have. Right. So I've experienced all kind of stuff. I can go on and on with my failures too, but
so those are good. Those are two key points. We're going to turn those into some clips, and those are going to be just nuggets for our investor audience.
No names.
No names. Let's go back to your list, because I remember you gave this great talk over at a meeting about the qualities you look for. Hit us with a few more. We got balance. Let's keep going.
Okay, a great sales ability. Okay, the CEO always has to be a salesperson, whether it's to investors, whether it's to partnership opportunities, whether it's their own employees to get something done and get everybody on board. You've got to be a great salesperson. If you're too timid and don't have any social EQ whatsoever, that's a problem for me. You've got to be able to understand what the person on the other side of the table wants and how to get to where you want to go effectively. So you got to be a salesperson.
Yeah. So
resilience. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So let me follow on with that because both Costin and I are technical people, but I think we've learned over the years to be salespeople. But how do you deal with a technical founder who is so passionate about the technology, but not sales oriented? How do you look at that person? And do you ever say to that person, you really are not the right person to be a CEO?
Well, first, I know both of you well, and you're both great salespeople. So do not denigrate yourself in any way. Okay, that's number one. Two is, it brings me into another trait, David. Does the CEO have the ability to hire and fire well? And the key to hiring well, among several other things, is knowing your own weaknesses in a small company, even a large company, right? You hire to supplement your weaknesses, to answer your question. So maybe he or she is a CEO with great technical skills and to do the product, but then he or she needs a partner, a COO, whatever, who can do the things to supplement he or she, right? So it's not necessarily the CEO needs to be a great salesperson, but there better be somebody up there in a high management that can, or else you can't.
They need to be a good salesperson enough to recruit that other counterpart that fills their void, right? To sell that vision and where this company's going. As long as you can bring those other people in that complete you, then
And firing is just as important, and people don't like to talk about it. For example, the person who got you to $5 million in revenue is often not the person who can get you to $50 million in revenue.
Yep.
And for CEO, you've grown up with this person, you've been in the trenches with this person, but with all the fairness and coaching, that person can't get you there. It's a really hard decision to fire that person, right?
Yeah.
And so that brings me to another trait. Just cut me off, guys.
Keep going. No, please keep going.
Another trait is, does the CEO have the ability to do what's best for the company in front of their own self-interest, right?
Yeah.
that's an example of having to fire somebody who you've become good friends with, right? That's your own self-interest. There's obvious examples of, I'll give you another one in a second, but you've got to be able to fire. Another one with your own interests and the interests of the company is when I meet with the CEO and he says, oh yeah, or he or she, there are 3 founders and I've given them each 1% and I have 98%. Okay. Bad sign. Okay. I don't want to hear that. I want to hear I kept 40% and give them each 30%. I want there to be a team and some kind of generosity. Put others in front of you if they're going to contribute as much as you. And so, there's all kind of things I look for, in that category as well.
And that I've heard the same advice from a really great TCA member. No names. And he said, as long as you put the interests of the company first, you'll do well. And that even means firing yourself. So talking to that CEO and saying, hey, if the company outgrows you and you're no longer the right CEO, are you willing to step down? And that person needs to be able to say yes, I think.
Costin, you're 100% correct. Yeah. But I've yet to meet anybody who said, I'm voluntarily stepping down, right?
Yeah.
I've been on boards where we've had to cajole and sometimes get a little firmer than that and get the CEO out. But again, operating skills of a $25 million company and startup skills are usually very different. Yeah. They very rarely overlap. And so, again,
and I'm not suggesting CEOs go out there and volunteer to get themselves fired, but after a little bit of pushback, maybe the board influences them, they should be open-minded enough to understand that this isn't the best interest of the company.
Exactly. And all these things are related. All of these traits are related. That's why I say balance and passion.
Yep. All right. What else you got for us, Jeff?
Resilience. Name me a startup CEO or any CEO who doesn't face obstacles on a daily basis or criticism. I remember, the analysts used to beat me up, within public companies. And, you go in the corner and sulk, or do you fight back and figure it out, right? And so you look for resilience. Very important, right?
Yeah.
So the other one that I haven't said, I'll make it my last one because I could go on for a long time, is vision. Does the CEO have a vision that's maybe beyond what others are thinking? Is he or she seeing opportunities that others are not seeing? Does the CEO have the ability to change and take a little risk? I mean, all CEOs are take risk, right? But you got to even take more risk as a startup CEO. You got to be able to do that pivot and see those opportunities that maybe others aren't seeing. I love it when a CEO says to me, Jeff, there is no competition whatsoever for my company, right? It's never true. But what about the company I saw last week? It's the same thing, right? So, I just, whatever. So do you have the ability to change, pivot, and see opportunities?
So let me ask you this. Right. So all these qualities are really important. How do you, as an investor, help the CEO in making sure those qualities are exercised?
Well, again, I interview every CEO. I didn't in the beginning, but the last 20 I've invested in, I've never not interviewed the CEO myself. Take he or she out to lunch or coffee, and usually it's one or two times. It's more than one time. And I ask a bunch of probing questions, all leading me to these traits that I talked about. And I'm very honest with the person. I'll give them an answer pretty quickly. And, I'll say, look, here is my concerns, and then I'll evaluate. Do they have the ability to overcome those concerns? Or do they not? And that's kind of an objective, 40-something years of experience kind of, mechanism that I employ. So sorry.
Okay.
It's probably CEO's calling you.
Yeah.
That or my wife, one or the other. Whatever. Right. Somebody, whatever. Yeah. So anyways, that's my list that least comes to mind.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really awesome. And I wonder, have you ever thought about putting this in a blog post or just putting it out there? I mean, obviously it's going to go out into the world, Jeff, as your list through this podcast now, but have you done anything else with that?
No, I never have. And I don't know how to turn the landline off, but whatever. I'm not that technical. I know how to turn my cell phone off, but I don't know how to turn the landline off. So sorry
how
about
do you
that.
still have a landline? This is your nudge. That's it. Time to get rid of the landline.
Okay, so my office, my home office where we are is in the basement of my house and the cell phone doesn't work. I need a landline. So I have no service down here. So whatever. So
get Ethernet and Wi-Fi.
I'm not published, but maybe I'll do something like that. It's always been a goal of mine to do some blogs or papers or whatever. So
let's say now the company is formed, you have the CEO in place, and the company is growing. What changes in the qualities of the CEO as now they go from startup into their, say, A round? What qualities become more critical than others, and how does the CEO potentially change what the CEO does and the rest of the team?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, a lot of these qualities stay the same, but different qualities become more important, like hiring and firing as you grow.
Okay.
And I gave the example before, right? Salesmanship and being persuasive and credible, right? You can't go in front of investors in that round and anything above that, right? I mean, I used to do these public offerings and travel around and sell these group of investors. And everybody said the most important thing you got is your credibility. And so, and then all the rest of the stuff behind it. But as soon as you lose people that they perceive you don't have credibility, you're dead. So I think that the traits stay the same. The priorities of the traits maybe change in the later as the business grows.
Yeah. And just one follow on to that, are there common pitfalls that a CEO, winds up in that sort of makes him a little, or he or she a little concerned about the leadership style or the leadership that person's giving to the company?
Yeah, I mean, look, we could talk about leadership style forever because, you want a passionate team. You want a team that feels involved and feel like they're relevant, right? You want a strong CEO, but is willing to listen to ideas. I mean, there's all kind of stuff that a CEO needs to do on a daily basis that if they don't have those qualities, they will fail both internally or externally or both. And it becomes pretty apparent, like a board member. And I strongly suggest to have a board for a CEO of people who can help them. Not people who are necessarily the largest investors or, their friends or all that. People who can genuinely help. It becomes pretty apparent on the boards that I've been on that, CEOs are failing in certain ways. And again, I coach as much as possible and boards coach as much as possible, but and I really apologize for this. I can't turn it off. Okay. I'm going to do this in front of everybody. Gina? I can't talk now. I'll call me back. Bye.
I love it. So it was your wife calling. It was your wife calling.
Yes. Sorry.
So that's your chairman of the board that you had to respond to. That's very good. So a CEO has to respond.
That is my CEO. That's my CEO. Right. Exactly. So, sorry about that.
Love it. No, all good. All good. So building the board is where you're at, and a board that can help them grow.
A board that truly helps, right? But the board, and if you see these traits, I've had calls from employees before as a board member, right? He or she is beating everybody up, and nobody wants to work here. We're all going to quit. I mean, you just got to coach the person, and if they can't do it, then you got to make a change, right? Because you can't beat people up all the time, right? That's a person with too much ego or other issues that are going on. Right.
Now, are you coaching people right now? How many people do you coach on the CEOs that you in the companies you invested in?
I'm still coaching probably 4 CEOs that I talk to on a regular basis. In my tender age, I'm trying to slow down, which I'm not good at, but I'm trying. I'm trying.
Never slow down, Jeff. Never slow down.
I'm trying.
Retirement is a bad word. Never. Don't do it.
All right, fair enough.
So we're gonna bring it in, and what I want to do is make sure we get a recap, because we tend to bounce around here on the crossroads. We take a lot of side roads. So correct me, but I think this is the list I captured, and I want to just get this succinctly for the viewers here at the end of the show. So you're looking for balance, passion, willing to listen, salesmanship, ability to hire and fire, resilience, and here at the end, ultimately leads to credibility. Everything leads to credibility, and you have to maintain your credibility. Did I get it all?
Pretty good, Kostin. Pretty good. You're hired.
Okay. Well, so and the thing to ask, so these are the qualities that the CEOs that you're looking to invest in should show you. Do you have it like a 1-minute tip? What can they do to improve on this stuff? Any books, anything that you think it could really help them?
No, I mean, the more you learn, the more you read, the better it is. But I still haven't read a book that says, what makes a great CEO. But there's a million blogs online. What makes a great CEO? Everybody's done it, from Harvard to McKinsey to Forbes to everybody, and it's basically the same list, and everybody interprets differently. But my advice to CEOs, I always tell them 3 things: always be honest. And walk that line, as I said before, between being aggressive and humble. Always maintain credibility. And number 2 is always look for opportunities, right? Try to see what other people don't, right? And always be willing to change and learn, right? And number 3 is always communicate with your investors. Can I tell a quick story about that I told before?
Please.
So, I had a CEO who I led the deal, and he didn't communicate with me for 7 years after multiple calls and emails. 7 years. And one day last year, he called me up and he said, "Jeff, I'm really sorry I haven't talked to you for 7 years, but I've sold the company and you're going to get 20 times your money." Okay. Now I forgave him. Okay. But 7 years, communicate. Your investors put up money in supporting you. Communicate with them. Anyways, those are my 3 tips that I usually give to CEOs.
That's a good way to end it. Good advice for everyone to hear the qualities, and the stories you tell are just spectacular. They really give insight into how investors should act and how the CEO should act. Kostin, you want to bring it home?
Yeah, I really wish we would have had more time to talk about Atari. I think that was a groundbreaking company, and it looks like you took it over after the founder, right after Nolan left, and all of that. And I heard his How I Made It on NPR, and I love the story. So maybe one day we'll grab lunch or something.
That'd be great.
Have another episode. Yeah,
I got good Nolan stories. Go ahead.
Oh man! Also, he made Chuck E. Cheese, and my kids are obsessed with Chuck E. Cheese.
He did. He's a friend. I brought him back on the Atari board as soon as I became CEO.
Oh, I love that. Okay, we're gonna have to have like a whole episode on that. So, Jeff, you're a legend in my book. One of the OG angel TCA guys who also helps the entrepreneurs, helps the companies, is what I consider smart money. Thank you so much for being on the episode. And thank you, viewer, listener. You're out there in the world, and we appreciate you. And I think that's it. You guys take care. Till next time.
Thank you both. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.